If you've ever had a moment that split your life into a before and an after, then you'll know exactly what I mean when I say mine happened on a Thursday morning in late autumn, inside my own kitchen, with the smell of burnt toast hanging in the air. My name is Lauren Hale. I'm 32 years old, a home stager in Portland who thought her biggest battles were late invoices and impossible deadlines. I was wrong. My real battle, the one that changed everything, began with a letter. A letter my older brother never meant for me to see. I had stopped by my mother's house to bring her groceries. She'd been recovering from knee surgery, and I'd become the unofficial caretaker between my siblings, though nobody had ever thanked me for it. Mom was still asleep when I let myself in with the spare key she insisted I keep. Her dining table was covered in a mess of envelopes, bills, coupons, catalogs, and right on top lay a thick cream envelope addressed to her in our family lawyer's handwriting. Something about it felt heavy, final. I set the groceries down and reached for it, intending only to stack it neatly with the others. But then I saw the sticky note. From Mark, read before Mom. My brother's handwriting. Sharp, impatient, familiar in a way that made my stomach clench. I froze my fingers on the seal. Mark the golden child. Mark who inherited Dad's construction company. Mark who always told me I was better at soft things while he handled the real decisions. And here was a letter he wanted Mom to see only after he had reviewed it first. Maybe I shouldn't have opened it. Maybe a better person wouldn't have. But I did. Inside was a revised draft of my mother's living trust and will. My name was there tucked near the bottom, like an afterthought. My brother, meanwhile, had been designated executor trustee and majority inheritor of the Hale family home and Dad's remaining company assets. There were explanations written in legal language, but the meaning hit like a punch. My mother had rewritten her will 3 weeks after my father died, and she had done it at my brother's insistence. There was a paragraph that made my hands shake. Lauren is in a creative field and has less financial stability. Mark will guide her decisions regarding any inheritance she receives. Guide me, as if I were a child, as if my brother should have authority over my adult life. And then the final blow, the distribution of assets, had shifted. I was no longer receiving the small rental house my father once promised me. It now belonged to Mark with the note, "He will manage this property in the family's best interest." I sank into a chair, the letter trembling in my hands. My father's voice echoed in my mind, soft, proud, telling me he wanted me to have that house so I'd always feel secure. He had told me that privately on Christmas Eve 2 years before he died. And now it was gone. Overridden. Stolen. The front door opened and I heard familiar footsteps. Mark walked into the kitchen like he owned the place, like he had always owned every room he entered. He froze when he saw the envelope in my hands. "Lauren," he said, voice tight, "you weren't supposed to read that." My throat tightened. "I saw your note." His jaw flexed. "And you still opened it." "You're cutting me out," I whispered. "Don't be dramatic." He snatched the papers from the table. "Mom needs structure. You don't understand how to handle long-term assets." Long-term assets. He meant Dad's company. He meant the rental house. He meant everything. "I've run my own business for 7 years," I said, my voice trembling. "What part of that seems irresponsible to you?" He looked at me the way he always had, like I was a soft breeze he could push aside. "You stage houses, Lauren. You don't manage them. Leave the real responsibilities to me." I felt something break inside me, not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. A clean, dangerous snap. Before that morning, I would have cried. I would have called my sister Claire for comfort. I would have swallowed it because keeping the peace was easier. But not this time. Not after everything I'd given this family. I stood up slowly. "I'm not letting you do this." He laughed, actually laughed. "You can't stop it, it's already signed." Maybe he believed that. But I had spent my entire life believing that he knew better, that he was stronger, that he held the power. Now I knew the truth. He wasn't strong. He was afraid. Afraid of losing control. Afraid of losing the empire he thought he'd inherited by birthright. And he had no idea what I was capable of when pushed. If I had known then what I would do next, how far I would go, how deep this betrayal would cut, I might have hesitated. But standing there with that letter, burning a hole in my memory, I made a decision that would change everything. I was done being the quiet sibling. I was going to take back what was mine, and I was going to do it in a way Mark would never see coming. The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't stay neatly in the moment it happens. It spreads slow acidic into everything that comes after. I drove home from Mom's house, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. The rain streaking across the windshield blurred the world outside, but my mind was crystal sharp. My father had trusted Mark with the company, yes. But he had trusted me with the part of him that mattered, the home he bought before any of us were born. Dad used to say the rental house was his proof that he could build something from nothing. He wanted me to have that security because he said I had inherited his dreamer heart. And Mark had stripped it away with a signature. When I reached my apartment, a small walk-up overlooking a noisy street, I didn't cry. I sat at my dining table, pulled out my laptop, and searched for something I never thought I would need. How to contest a will. Pages of legal articles. Firms specializing in probate litigation. Stories from people blindsided by manipulative siblings. For the first time, I saw myself in them. But I wasn't ready to go nuclear yet. Contesting a will was a battlefield. What I needed first was information. So I texted the only person who understood both my family and my father's company from the inside, Ryan. He had been my father's project manager for nearly a decade. After Dad died, Mark reduced his hours, claiming restructuring. I always suspected he did it to establish dominance rather than for any practical reason. I typed, "Are you free tonight? Need to talk. Urgent." He replied a minute later, "For you always, 7. When I walked into the small brewery we'd chosen, he was already there, leaning against the table with the same quiet steadiness he'd always had. He wasn't flashy like Mark. He didn't fill a room with noise. He filled it with attention. But tonight his expression shifted the moment he saw me. What happened? I sat across from him, lowered my voice, and told him everything. The revised trust. The missing inheritance. The line about Mark guiding my decisions. His fist tightened around his glass. "He can't do that," he said. "Your dad never intended that." "I know," I whispered. He leaned back, thinking, "What did your mom say?" "She doesn't know I saw the document. And even if she did," I exhaled. "She always folds under his pressure." Ryan nodded slowly, sadness flickering across his face. "Your dad worried about that. He told me once that Mark could be forceful. Forceful was one word, manipulative was another. I need to know what's really happening in the company," I said. "I feel like this is just the beginning." Ryan hesitated. "Lauren, are you sure you want to step into this? Mark's been making moves, big ones, and not all of them look clean." My pulse spiked. "What kind of moves?" He lowered his voice. "For the past year, he's been diverting project funds, small amounts at first, then larger. He hides them under consulting fees. I've tried to confront him, but he shut me out of the books." My stomach turned. "So he's siphoning money." Ryan gave a grim nod. "I didn't want to involve you unless I had proof. But after what you just told me..." I swallowed hard. "Could this be grounds to challenge the will?" "Not directly," he said. "But if he manipulated your mother into rewriting it, if he exerted pressure while hiding financial misconduct, then yes, it helps." For a moment, the brewery's noise faded into a distant hum. Something inside me settled, not rage, not despair, but a cold, calm resolve. "So what do we do?" I asked. Ryan studied me quietly. "Is this revenge, Lauren, or justice?" I met his gaze. "Does it matter if the outcome is the same?" He didn't argue. Instead, he leaned in, voice steady. "If we're doing this, we do it smart. We build a case, we gather proof, and we expose him in a way he never sees coming." A small shiver ran through me, not of fear, but of recognition. My father had always told me I underestimated myself, that I was stronger than I believed. Tonight I finally understood what he meant. Mark thought I was soft. Mark thought I was weak. Mark had no idea who he had just woken up. The first step in unraveling a liar's empire is simple: you watch, you listen, you collect every thread he doesn't realize he's dropping. And Mark, despite the image he'd built, was sloppy when he thought no one questioned him. 2 days after meeting Ryan, I drove to my mother's house again. Not to confront her, not yet. I needed something else. I needed the truth from her without Mark's shadow looming over her. Mom was in the living room knitting when I arrived. She looked smaller than usual, older somehow, like grief had sanded down her edges. I sat beside her, letting silence settle first. "Mom," I said softly, "can I ask you something about Dad's will?" Her needles paused. "Oh, sweetheart, I knew this would come up eventually." That sentence alone told me everything. "You changed it," I said. "Why?" She didn't look at me. "Mark said it was better this way." Better for who? A long breath, tight, tired. He told me you didn't want the responsibility of managing property, that you said it stressed you out. I stared at her. I never said that. She looked up confused. He showed me a text. My blood ran cold. A text from who? From you, she whispered. My throat tightened. Mom, Mark forged that. Her face went pale. What? I nodded slowly, letting the truth settle between us like ash. I never said I didn't want the house. Dad told me on his last Christmas he wanted me to have it. Mom covered her mouth with trembling fingers. Oh my God, she said through a cracked whisper. What have I done? My heart squeezed, not with victory, not with vindication, but with the familiar ache of a daughter loving someone who had always been too gentle to stand up to the louder child. Mom, listen to me, I said softly. You didn't do anything wrong. Mark pressured you. He manipulated you. She shook her head, tears forming. I should have known. He was so insistent. Insistent. The same way he had always been. With Dad, with us, with every room he entered. Her breathing grew uneven, panic edging closer. I reached for her hands. Mom, it's okay, we can fix this. She looked at me with a kind of fragile hope. How? And then I felt it, a shift inside me. A clarity I hadn't felt in years. By telling the truth, I said. And by not letting him control anything else. Mom nodded, but there was fear in her eyes. If he finds out I told you, he won't, I said gently. Not until it's too late for him to undo it. She looked down at her knitting, then back at me. I didn't mean to hurt you, Lauren. I squeezed her hand, I know. But hurt me she had. And that wound, raw as it was, fueled my resolve. As I drove away, my phone buzzed with a text from my sister Claire. Mark's been asking where you've been. Did something happen? I stared at the message. Claire, the middle child. The peacemaker. The one who avoided conflict like it might stain her. I loved her, but she was unreliable when tension rose. She floated toward harmony even if it meant ignoring the truth. I typed back, working. Everything's fine. I didn't trust her, not yet. Not until I knew where she stood. My next stop was Dad's old office in the construction company building, now technically Mark's office. The parking lot was half empty, the building quieter than I remembered. The receptionist recognized me and waved me through without question. Dad's framed awards still hung on the walls. The smell of sawdust still clung faintly to the air. But the heart of the place, the warmth Dad carried with him, was gone. I walked into the storage room and found what I came for, the archived financial ledgers. The older books were handwritten by my father. The newer ones were printed spreadsheets. I photographed everything from the last 3 years, every expense, every consulting fee, every inconsistently rounded amount, every shadow mark left behind. By the time I stepped back outside, the late afternoon sun had sharpened the world into something painfully bright. My entire childhood I'd believed Mark was the strong one. Now, looking at the stack of evidence I'd gathered, I realized something that sent a strange calm through my bloodstream. He wasn't strong. He was reckless. And reckless men underestimate quiet women. That was going to be his downfall. 3 days later, I met Ryan again, this time in an old warehouse the company used for storage. No one came here anymore, and that privacy mattered now more than ever. I laid out the printed spreadsheets on an overturned crate. Rows of numbers stared back at us like a confession. Ryan whistled low. He really thought no one would notice. He thought you wouldn't have access, I said. He cut my access, Ryan corrected. But he forgot one thing: your dad gave me a physical backup of every quarter's reports until the year he died. I looked at him, startled. Why? Because he didn't trust Mark with everything, Ryan said quietly. Not after he saw how desperate he was to take control. Something in my chest tightened, grief mixed with relief. Dad hadn't been blind. He had seen Mark's hunger for dominance the same way I was seeing it now. Ryan sorted the papers with methodical precision. These consulting fees, they don't exist. The vendor names are fake. And the withdrawals, I asked, all under $10,000, he said. Small enough to avoid triggering automatic reviews. But they add up. How much? He counted silently. About 200,000 total. I exhaled sharply. That's enough to bury him. Ryan looked up, eyes steady. Lauren, listen. If we go forward with this, there's no turning back. This isn't just a family argument anymore. This is legal fraud. I know, and it could go public. So let it. He studied me for a long moment. You're not the same person you were 2 weeks ago. No, I said, I'm not. And I didn't want to be her again. That Lauren stayed quiet. That Lauren believed peace was more important than truth. That Lauren surrendered her inheritance, her dignity, and her voice just to avoid confrontation. She was gone. Ryan pulled out a folder. There's more. My heart jumped. More what? Mark has been preparing to sell part of the company. My breath froze. He can't. Dad left the controlling stake split between him and Mom. Yes, Ryan said, but he forged Dad's signature on a draft amendment. It never went through because your father died before he could sign the real document. But Mark has been showing that draft to potential buyers like it's legitimate. My vision blurred for a moment, not from tears, but from furious disbelief. He used Dad's death, I whispered. Ryan nodded. He used everything. That was when the idea formed sharp, simple, devastating. I wasn't just going to contest the will. I was going to expose him. Publicly. Completely. And at the company's annual investor review, an event scheduled exactly 2 weeks away. Mark lived for that presentation. It was his stage, his moment to show the world he was the rightful heir to our father's empire. What would happen if the truth unfolded on that stage instead? Ryan must have seen something change in my expression. What are you thinking? I took a slow breath. I'm thinking, I said, that revenge doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes the most powerful payback is letting someone reveal exactly who they are. And how do we do that? I met his eyes steady. By preparing the one presentation he'll never recover from. For the first time since Dad died, I felt something like strength spread through my ribs, not fragile, not borrowed. My own. Mark thought he had secured the story. But he'd forgotten something essential. I was my father's daughter. And dreamers are dangerous when you corner them. The days leading up to the investor review felt like moving through a storm no one else could see. On the surface, my life looked the same: client meetings, staging work, coffee runs. But underneath, every thought pulsed with a single purpose: dismantling the illusion my brother had built. I spent evenings at my dining table surrounded by papers, receipts, and Ryan's notes. My laptop became a vault of proof spreadsheets, ledger scans, photos of forged signatures, and recordings of conversations with Mom that documented her confusion. My entire digital life had one function now: truth. But truth on its own wasn't enough. I needed a strategy. On Monday morning, I booked a consultation with a probate and estate attorney named Denise Harper, a woman in her early 60s with the kind of calm competence that made you feel like you weren't alone in the fight. She shook my hand firmly as I sat down in her office, sunlight streaming across her shelves of legal tomes. Lauren, she said, settling into her chair, I read your email, and I need you to know something before we start. I braced myself. You're not crazy. And you're not the first person to walk in here with a story where a sibling has manipulated a grieving parent. The relief that washed through me came in a silent wave. I nodded. I just need to know if I have a case. Not only a case, she said, but a strong one. The forged text message to your mother alone is damning. The financial misconduct at the company strengthens it further. But the will is already signed, I said quietly. It can be challenged, she replied. Especially if we can prove undue influence. If your brother intentionally misled your mother while concealing fraud, that's grounds for reversal. A tightness in my chest loosened for the first time since I'd opened that envelope. What happens if we move forward? First, she said, we file an intent to contest. Second, we gather formal evidence. Third, we leverage timing. Timing. She leaned forward, fingers steepled. When does the company's investor review happen? In 2 weeks. Her smile was slow and knowing. Mark will be vulnerable then. Investors hate instability. If his misconduct surfaces publicly, he loses credibility both in the company and with your mother. So you're saying we should time our action around the review? I'm saying, she replied, that fairness is often most effective when witnessed. I walked out of her office with a stack of documents and a calm that didn't feel like mine. As I started my car, a text from Claire popped up. Dinner Thursday. Mark wants to talk about something. You too. My gut twisted. I typed back, I'll be there. If Mark wanted a family meeting, it meant he felt something shifting. He always sensed threats to his control. He didn't know where the danger was coming from yet, but he smelled smoke. Fine. Let him. That night, Ryan met me at the warehouse again. He brought a flash drive with updated ledger files. I found more, he said, handing it to me. He shifted funds right after your dad passed, like he knew no one would look closely. I stared at the drive, my pulse steady. Then we make sure everyone looks closely. Ryan watched me for a moment. Lauren, are you ready for what this might do to your family? My jaw tightened. My brother made his choice. I'm making mine. He nodded, accepting my answer without judgment. That was what I loved about him, not romantically, but in the way you love someone who sees you clearly. After he left, I sat alone in my car, the flash drive warm in my hand. My breath fogged the windshield as I whispered to myself something I had never said out loud before. I am not afraid of him anymore. And once I said it, I knew it was true. The family dinner was held at my mother's house, a place that had always tried to be a sanctuary, but had slowly become a battleground. When I pulled into the driveway, Mark's car was already there, gleaming like it knew it belonged to him. Or at least that's how he saw it. Claire greeted me at the door, voice soft as ever. Hey, thanks for coming. She hugged me, but her body felt rigid nerves, not warmth. Whatever this dinner was, she already knew it wouldn't end well. Mom stood in the kitchen stirring a pot of soup, her hands slightly shaking. When she looked up, guilt flickered across her eyes. I gave her a small, reassuring nod. We sat down at the dining table, me, Claire, Mom on one side, Mark alone on the other, like a judge awaiting testimony. He cleared his throat dramatically. So he began, we need to talk about the will. Mom flinched and I saw it. Mark noticed too. He leaned back. Lauren, I know you saw the papers. Mom told me. My heart stopped. I looked at her. She avoided my eyes. So she had folded already. Just like Ryan predicted. Just like always. My voice was calm when I spoke. Yes, I saw them. Good, Mark said. Then you know why things are structured the way they are. I folded my hands. Tell me anyway. He sighed as if exhausted by my ignorance. The house, the company, the assets, they're complicated. They require management. Someone with experience. Someone who understands. Someone like you, I said. His smile was thin. Exactly. And someone who thinks I can't handle anything, I added. He shrugged. It's not personal. Mom, whispered Mark. No, I said, cutting her off gently. Let him talk. You've always been emotional, Mark said. Dad worried about that. He wanted me to guide you. My voice remained quiet. Dad never said that to me. Well, maybe he didn't want to hurt your feelings. Something inside me snapped. Funny, I said, since he told me privately that the rental house was meant to be mine. Mark froze. Mom gasped softly. His voice sharpened. You misunderstood him. No, I said. But you needed it for leverage, didn't you? His face reddened. Excuse me? You forged a text to Mom telling her I didn't want responsibility. Silence. Mom covered her mouth. Claire went rigid beside me. What Mark tell me she's lying? He forced a laugh. Of course she is. Why would I do that? To control everything I said. To cut me out. To strengthen your position in the company before the investor review. His eyes narrowed. Stay out of the company. You know nothing about it. I know enough, I replied. Like the consulting fees that don't exist, the vendors you fabricated, the quarterlies you altered. He went still, stone still. Where did you get that? He whispered. I leaned forward. Truth has a way of finding people you underestimated. Sweat appeared at the edge of his hairline. Claire whispered, horrified, Mark. What is she talking about? He slammed his fist on the table. Mom jolted. This is exactly why Dad didn't trust you with real responsibility, Lauren. You twist things. You make drama. You don't understand business. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't flinch. I simply asked, did you or did you not divert company funds? His lips parted, closed, opened again. I don't have to answer that. That was an answer. Claire sat back, eyes wide. Oh my God! Mom started crying softly. I rose from my chair. This dinner isn't about the will, Mark. It's about you finding out you're losing control. He pointed at me, fury trembling through him. If you go after me, I'll take you down with me. For years, I said calmly, you believed you could. I picked up my coat. But that ends at the investor review. His voice broke. What are you planning? I walked to the door, my heart steady. You'll see. And for the first time in our lives, he didn't follow me. The morning after the disastrous dinner, I expected fear to settle into my chest. After all, I had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Instead, I woke with a clarity that startled me. I had momentum and I would not waste it. The next step was securing evidence, real, undeniable presentation-ready evidence. I spent the day scanning every ledger page, categorizing transactions, building timelines. My computer screen was a mosaic of spreadsheets and notes. But what I needed most was verification. So I reached out to someone I hadn't spoken to since Dad's funeral, his former accountant, Helen. She was in her early 70s and retired now, but her mind was sharp as glass, and she had adored my father. When she answered my call, her voice carried both surprise and affection. Lauren, oh honey, how are you? I hesitated. I need your help. Helen invited me to her house, a modest single-story home with rose bushes lining the walkway. She served tea before even asking why I was there. When I finally explained, laying the spreadsheets between us, her expression darkened. These numbers don't match the books your father kept, she said. He was meticulous, every cent accounted for. So the inconsistencies are real. She nodded, and deliberate. Relief and dread tangled inside me. Helen continued. Your father suspected Mark might take shortcuts one day. Not because he was bad, but because he wanted so badly to prove himself. I breathed slowly. Dad told me once that insecurity can be louder than confidence. She smiled sadly. He was right. We spent hours analyzing entries. She highlighted suspicious transactions, explained patterns, and identified potential fraud markers. When she handed me her written summary, my throat tightened. This is enough to open a formal investigation, she said. I didn't cry, but I wanted to. That night, I met Ryan at a quiet diner. After showing him Helen's report, he exhaled a long breath. This is the kind of evidence that collapses careers. He collapsed his own, I said. I'm just pulling the curtain back. He studied me, something warm but worried in his eyes. You know he won't go down quietly. I'm counting on it. Because desperate men make mistakes, and mistakes make truth louder. We decided then the investor review would be the stage. Mark would walk into that room expecting applause, control, superiority. He would walk out exposed. But something else happened that night, something I didn't expect. As Ryan walked me to my car, he paused. Your dad would be proud of you, he said. The words hit deeper than he probably meant. I had spent years chasing Dad's approval even after he was gone. Hearing that now, it anchored me. Thank you, I whispered. He nodded once and stepped back. As I drove home, the city lights flickered across my windshield like passing ghosts. This path I was on, this war, it wasn't about money anymore, or property, or legacy. It was about reclaiming the voice I had quieted for 32 years, and I wasn't turning back. The day of the investor review arrived cold and bright, the kind of morning that felt like the world was holding its breath. I had barely slept. Instead, I had rehearsed my plan again and again, until every word, every slide, every reveal lived beneath my skin. The conference center rented for the presentation was sleek and modern with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Willamette River. Investors arrived in tailored suits carrying leather folders and guarded expressions. They came expecting confidence from Mark. Stability. Continuity. What they would get instead was the truth. I wore a black blazer, my hair pinned back, my presentation file tucked in my bag. Denise, my attorney, had prepped statements for afterward. Ryan waited near the back with a folder of physical evidence. Helen had written a notarized affidavit backing our findings. Every piece was in place. Mark spotted me when I entered. His face drained of color, then flushed with anger. What are you doing here? He hissed, grabbing my arm. I pulled away. It's an investor review, Mark. I'm family. You're here to cause trouble. I'm here to tell the truth. His jaw clenched. If you ruin this for me, you ruined it for yourself. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Back off, I'm warning you. I met his eyes evenly. I'm not afraid of you anymore. That stopped him, completely. He stared at me like he didn't recognize the woman in front of him. And maybe he didn't. Maybe the sister he used to control had finally vanished. Inside the presentation room, chairs were arranged in neat rows. A massive screen displayed the company logo. Investors murmured as they found their seats. I took one near the center aisle. Mark walked to the podium, forcing a smile. He began with rehearsed charm, talking about quarterly projections and growth opportunities. His voice carried confidence, but his hands betrayed a tremor. Then came the moment. His slide changed to the financial section charts he had manipulated, numbers he had inflated. I stood up. Excuse me, I said. The room fell silent. Mark stiffened. Sit down, Lauren. No, I replied, projecting my voice. Not until they hear what you've concealed. Gasps, confusion. A few investors leaned forward. I walked toward the stage, my heart steady. For the past year, I said my brother has diverted company funds into fabricated consulting fees. He has misled investors, misled our mother, and manipulated the family trust to consolidate control. Mark's face went white. This is a lie. I held up a folder. These are the original ledgers, I said. The ones our father kept. And these, I pointed to the screen, are the altered ones. Murmurs erupted. An investor in the front row stood. Is this true? Mark stammered. It's a misunderstanding. Ryan stepped forward, handing copies of the evidence to the investors. Helen's affidavit was included. Denise stood at the doorway, ready. I stepped closer to the stage. My father built this company on integrity, I said, and Mark has betrayed that legacy. Mark's voice cracked. Lauren, stop. No, I said. You don't get to silence me anymore. He lunged toward me, but two investors grabbed his shoulders. One of them said sharply, we need answers, now. Mark's mask shattered. His composure fractured before our eyes. His voice rose frantic. She's doing this because she's jealous. Because she wants the house. Because she can't stand that. Dad trusted me. I let his outburst hang in the air, raw, exposed. Then I said quietly but clearly, Dad trusted both of us, but only one of us abused that trust. Silence. Heavy. Final. The lead investor stepped toward me. Miss Hale, we will be launching an internal audit effective immediately. Mark's knees buckled. He collapsed into a chair, face buried in his hands. The empire he thought he controlled had crumbled in under 3 minutes. I walked out of the room as whispers swelled behind me. Outside, the crisp air hit my lungs like baptism. It was done, or so I thought. The aftermath of the review didn't unfold the way I expected. I thought the moment I stepped out of that conference room I'd feel triumphant, liberated even. But instead I felt hollow, like someone had scooped out parts of me I hadn't realized I depended on. Because revenge, real revenge, not the fantasy version, always costs something. The drive home was quiet, too quiet. My phone buzzed nonstop, messages from investors, from unknown numbers, from journalists already sniffing around the story. I turned it face down on the passenger seat. For the first time in days, the silence scared me more than the noise. I parked outside my apartment, sat motionless for a moment, then felt tears gather without warning. They slid down my cheeks, not fast, not choking, just slow and warm, a release my body needed even if my mind resisted it. I wasn't crying because I regretted exposing Mark. I was crying because I finally admitted what I had lost, the illusion that my family could ever be repaired without breaking first. My phone chimed, a voicemail from Claire. I pressed play. Lauren, it's me. I don't even know what to say. Mom's upset. Mark is... I've never seen him like this. Call me, please. I just want to understand. I closed my eyes. Of course Claire wanted to understand. She was the middle child, trained in peacekeeping and patching cracks without looking at the foundation underneath. I wasn't ready to talk to her yet. Instead, I called Mom. She answered on the first ring, voice shaking. Lauren. Are you safe? Claire told me what happened. Investors called me. I don't know what's going on. Her fear pierced me. Mom, I'm okay. But Mark, they said there were accusations. Fraud, misconduct. Honey, tell me it isn't true. My hand tightened on the phone. It is true. I showed proof. She sucked in a breath. Oh my God. There was a long, fragile silence. Then she whispered, how did we get here? I stared at the glowing street lamps outside as raindrops slid across my windshield. We got here, I said softly, because everyone trusted Mark without ever questioning him. Because nobody asked how his control affected the rest of us. Because I stayed quiet too long. I expected anger or disappointment, but instead Mom said something that broke me even more deeply. I'm sorry, she whispered. I should have protected you, Lauren. Your father trusted me to take care of all of you, and I just let Mark handle everything because it was easier. I wiped my cheek with the back of my hand. Mom, I don't want you blaming yourself. But I do, she insisted. I need to. I let him push me. I signed things I didn't understand because he said he knew better. And I believed him. Her voice cracked. I'm so sorry, I didn't see what he was doing. My throat ached. We can fix this together. She didn't speak for several seconds. Then softly, I want to make things right. That sentence felt like a window opening. Then we will, I said. We hung up, and for the first time since the will surfaced, I felt something like hope. Not sharp, not triumphant. A gentle hope, bruised but alive. The next morning, headlines hit local news outlets. Hale Construction under internal audit following investor concerns. Family member raises questions about financial accuracy. Sources report tension among Hale siblings. I skimmed only enough to know the story was spreading. I didn't want to read the comments. I didn't want to see strangers dissecting my family like entertainment. A knock sounded on my door that afternoon. It was Ryan. His hair was wind-tossed, his expression grim but determined. You okay? He asked. I let him in. I don't know. He nodded, accepting the honesty without trying to fix it. That was a big blow yesterday, he said. For him. But for you, it was necessary. I sat on the couch. Why don't I feel better? Because you loved him, Ryan said simply, even when he didn't deserve it. The truth of that hit deep. Ryan sat beside me, leaving enough space to breathe. What happens next? I don't know, I whispered. But I think the real fallout is just beginning. He nodded. And you won't face it alone. I didn't realize how much I needed those words until I heard them. 3 days after the review, the company announced the start of a formal audit. Mark was placed on temporary leave pending investigation. Investors demanded documentation. Emails flooded his inbox. The empire he had controlled for years was slipping. But the personal fallout was far more brutal. That evening, Claire appeared at my apartment without warning. Her eyes were red from crying. She clutched a cardigan around herself like armor. "Lauren," she said, voice trembling, "can I come in?" I stepped aside. She didn't sit, she paced. "I talked to Mark," she said. "He's devastated. He says you blindsided him, humiliated him, ruined his career." "He ruined his own career," I replied quietly. She stopped pacing, staring at me. Did he really do all those things? The forged text? The fake fees? Yes. Her lips parted, disbelief and heartbreak mingling on her face. But why would he do that? Because he needed control, I said. Because he couldn't stand the idea that Dad trusted any of us but him. She sat heavily on the armchair. "Mom is a mess," she whispered. "She keeps saying she didn't mean to hurt you. She keeps asking why Mark would lie to her." I swallowed hard, because he knew she'd believe him. Claire covered her face. "This family is falling apart." I sat across from her. "It didn't fall apart now, Claire. It's been cracked for years. We just stopped pretending." She dropped her hands. "So what happens now? We fix what we can, and we stop enabling what we can't." She sighed, defeated. "Do you hate him?" I shook my head. "No. I'm just done letting him hurt us." Her eyes brimmed. "He asked me something last night." "What?" She hesitated. "He asked if you're going to press charges." I stiffened. "I haven't decided," I said. Claire leaned forward desperately. "Lauren, if he gets charged, he could go to prison." I didn't say anything, because I didn't know how to answer. Claire touched my hand. "Please, think about what that would do to Mom." I pulled gently away. "That's exactly what got us here. Worrying about how consequences might hurt Mark, instead of how Mark hurt us." She flinched. I softened my voice. "I'm not rushing anything, but I'm not protecting him anymore." She nodded slowly, accepting the boundary even if she didn't like it. Before she left, she said something that stayed with me long after the door closed. "I always thought you were the gentle one," Claire whispered. "But maybe you're the strong one after all." I didn't feel strong, but I held on to the words anyway. That night, my mother called again. "I want the will changed back," she said, "to what your father intended." I closed my eyes, relief washing through me. "Okay," I whispered, "we'll do it." "And Lauren?" "Yes." "Thank you for telling me the truth, even when I didn't want to hear it." When we hung up, I realized something. Getting the inheritance back wasn't the victory. The victory was that my mother finally saw me not as the fragile daughter needing guidance, but as the woman willing to fight for what was right. A week after the investor review, I received an unexpected call from the state's corporate fraud division. Denise had forwarded our documents to them, and they wanted a formal interview. I arrived at the office building with a folder of evidence and a stomach full of nerves. The investigator assigned to my case, a woman named Barron, greeted me warmly. "Ms. Hale," she said, "I have looked over your materials. You've built a very strong foundation here." I sat across from her. "I just want what's fair." "Fair," she repeated, "has a wide definition in cases involving family, but justice is clear." She asked question after question. When I first suspected wrongdoing, how I got the ledgers, who had access to the accounts, whether my mother had been coerced. When the interview ended, she closed her folder and said, "We'll be opening a formal investigation into your brother." My heart pounded. "Does that mean charges?" "Not necessarily," she said, "but it's possible." Possible. That word echoed. Possible that Mark could face consequences he couldn't charm his way out of. Possible that the truth would be louder than his excuses. Possible that this would finally end. As I walked out of the building, my phone buzzed. A message from Mark. "We need to talk." I ignored it. 5 minutes later, another. "I'm begging you, Lauren." Then, "Don't let them take everything from me, please." I stopped on the sidewalk, staring at the pleading words from a man who had never once admitted weakness. Then another came. "I'm sorry." 2 words I had wanted to hear for years. But not like this. Not when he was cornered. Not when his apology was a bargaining chip instead of truth. I didn't reply. That evening, Mark showed up at my apartment. He didn't knock gently. His fist pounded like he was shattering the wood. I opened the door only because I wanted to look him in the eyes. He stood there, disheveled, desperate. Nothing like the commanding man who used to walk into every room like he owned it. "Lauren," he said, breathless, "please." I crossed my arms. "What do you want?" "I need you to drop it. The audit, the investigation, all of it." His eyes were wild, brimming with fear. "You have no idea what they'll do to me," he whispered. "They'll do what you did to yourself." He flinched. "I made mistakes," he said. "Okay, I admit it. I pushed too hard. I took too much. I shouldn't have pressured Mom. I shouldn't have altered the reports. He choked on the next words. I needed to prove I could handle everything after Dad died. I stared at him. This was the closest thing I might ever get to the truth behind his lies. You didn't have to handle everything I said quietly. You just had to stop treating the rest of us like you owned us. He dragged a hand through his hair. I don't want to go to prison. His fear didn't move me the way he wanted it to. Then you should have thought about that before you forged documents, I said. His voice cracked. You're my sister. And Dad was my father, I whispered. And you disrespected his legacy. He closed his eyes. Then he asked, barely audible, is there anything I can say to change your mind? I shook my head. You didn't listen to me for years. Why should I listen to you now? He sagged against the doorframe, defeated. It was the first time I'd ever seen him small. When he walked away, I didn't feel triumph. I felt something deeper. Finality. The resolution came quietly, quieter than the storm that preceded it. 3 weeks after the investor review, after interviews, audits, and difficult conversations, my mother signed a new trust, one aligned with my father's wishes without Mark's influence. The rental house was restored to me. The company remained split equally between my mother and the estate. And Mark was officially removed from all leadership roles pending the outcome of the state investigation. He didn't fight it. He couldn't. His lawyer negotiated a settlement that required him to pay restitution to the company and barred him from holding any executive positions for a set number of years. Criminal charges, at least for now, were suspended conditional on full repayment and cooperation. It wasn't prison, but it was the dismantling of his kingdom. The morning my mother handed me the finalized documents, she hugged me and whispered, I'm proud of you. Words I had longed for my entire life. And they meant more now than they ever would have before, because I earned them not by being quiet but by being brave. Claire and I slowly rebuilt our relationship. She apologized for doubting me, and I apologized for shutting her out. Healing wasn't linear, but it was possible. As for Mark, we didn't speak for months. Then one afternoon in early spring, he sent me a message. I'm in therapy. I know it doesn't change anything, but I want to be better. Not for the company, for myself. I stared at the text for a long time before replying. I hope you do become better, for all of us. No promises, no absolution. Just truth. The kind I had fought so hard for. One evening, not long after I drove to the rental house, my house now, the sun was setting, the sky painted gold and lavender. I unlocked the front door and stepped into the quiet space my father had once lovingly renovated. For the first time, it felt like mine. Not inherited, not granted, claimed, earned. A symbol of the battle I had survived. As I stood in the doorway, I thought about the version of myself who began this journey. The woman who opened an envelope at her mother's dining table and felt the ground shift beneath her. She didn't know she would expose a fraud. She didn't know she would confront generational habits of silence. She didn't know she would lose and gain and change as completely as she had. But she did know one thing, one truth powerful enough to move mountains. She deserved better, and she finally fought for it. If you're listening to this and you've ever been the overlooked sibling, the underestimated daughter, the quiet one in a loud family, I hope my story reminds you of something important. Revenge isn't always destruction. Sometimes revenge is reclamation, reclaiming your voice, your worth, your place. And sometimes the greatest justice isn't watching someone else fall, it's watching yourself rise. Thank you for listening to my story. If you want more true life revenge stories like this, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. There are so many more voices waiting to be heard, and I'd be honored to share them with you.